system that we're familiar with DVDs, the encoding that's involved there, everybody started to realise this is something that could happen. Nobody had any idea it would take so long to reach the public. It's really, let's face it, it's only today, it's only last year really that people are starting to understand that they can have surround sound at home. And the only problem is, where do we hide the wire to the speakers? But apart from that, we get this real true cinema experience at home. And we also start to realise that in the past, a lot of movies have been made where, going back maybe 10 or 20 years, where the sound dubs have been very exotic and technically adept for cinemas, but that's the only place that you've ever heard that sound, and now we can hear it at home, and we start to realise how much it adds to movies to hear the original multi-channel sound dubs.
Were many of the cinemas geared up to actually play it in quintaphonic?
No, we had to equip cinema specially, and the main prints that went out into the world at large were either 3-track mag, or of course this new stereo Dolby optical. In fact, I think there was an experiment somewhere to take the stereo optical and turn it into a 5-channel in some way, but in fact Dolby then did start to work on their own encoding, and I now understand that they brought in the Sensui system and incorporated it into their current very, very elaborate and intelligent decoding systems. And they also, of course, Dolby also, like some of the other systems like DTS, do surround sound synthesis as well.
You mentioned that when you was recording Quadrophenia, you was frustrated by not being able to get the sound you wanted. Do you feel this technology allowed you everything you wanted to do? As I said, this was something that happened quite late in the day. Just before we were about to start dubbing, I was introduced to John Mosley. We weren't aware of it. I wasn't aware that this was on the cards when we were recording, so it certainly wasn't an ambition of mine. It was one that I suppose I gladly picked up. Where are we? 75? Was it? Came out 75.
So we're probably dubbing in 74. 73 was when I'd been, fighting to get this quad sorted out on Quadrophenia. And the limitation really there was the vinyl disc. It was a stereo track, encoding. So there's very little low-end separation between the left and the right on a vinyl track anyway. 5.1 sound as we know it today wouldn't exist without the the versatile digital disc, the CD optical platter. It would never have happened from vinyl. We tried and it wouldn't work.
You mentioned that The Who was still performing while filming was going on, and during filming you did a show in Portsmouth for some of the students that performed as extras in the film. You said at the time it was one of the most enjoyable, or one of the best gigs the band had done, and yet a month later you performed at Madison Square Garden and you seemed almost disillusioned with both playing live and being in the band. Do you think the heavy workload you'd taken on during filming affected you with this?
No, not quite. I think there was something else going on, which is he's going back to America to perform. Not sure of the chronology, whether that was before the movie had come out or after. Was it before? Well, I would have thought that that there would have been a sense that maybe that I was probably exhausted. And as I said, the drinking had taken a toll on me as well. I had definitely built up a habit of drinking every day, and hadn't seen very much of my family for a long time. In fact, at one time when doing the post-production work, I'd actually put another multi-track machine down in my living room, wired it up the hallway because I had my studio at the top of the house, and was running up and down the stairs to put tape reels on. I was using my home as part of the Tommy production thing. I don't really don't quite know how my wife stood it. I suppose she just didn't really have much choice. I think also there's always been a sense that I think if I have a character defect, it is that I find it very difficult to look after myself and to say no. And I know I kept you gentlemen waiting today. I mean, that's an example of the way I try to do things differently. And if it gets to lunchtime and I haven't eaten, I don't just keep working because I think, well, I'm not going to do a very good job. So, but at that particular time, I really just didn't know how to say no. And there were a lot of things that, the short fact of it is that we shouldn't have been playing at Madison Square Gardens for two or three nights, whatever it was at that particular time. And I particularly did not appreciate the response to the difficulties that I had at the time, because I had worked so hard. Roger had worked very, very hard as well. Keith had worked hard, John had worked, we'd all worked very, very hard. And the kind of spoiled bratness of a lot of the Who fans at the time and the way that the band divided on the issue of what was going on with our fans, I found it very, very difficult to deal with. Because Tommy, as far as the fans were concerned, was pretty old hat. They hadn't seen the film. I think a lot of Who fans, when they did see the film, didn't particularly like it. So Ken's film is very, very English, and that's what I loved about it. It was very much... And I think a lot of Americans had used the vagueness of the original story to fill in there. That's what makes good popular art is that making a hole in it so that you can put yourself into the middle of it. And I think it felt appropriated. But no, that was a hard time.
You mentioned the very Englishness of the movie, and that's what you loved about it. What was that your initial reaction when you saw the finished article?
When I first started to look at the script, I realised that what Ken shared with me was that I divide VE Day, people born either side of VE Day, into what I call the crows and the finches. We're numerous, but some of us are pre-war, and thus crows, and some of us are post-VE Day, and we're finches. We're more colourful and less burdened. Ken's 10 years older than I am, maybe even a bit older than that, and so he's from the group prior. That if there's a generation gap, it was created around VE Day, and of course there are people that could cross over, like Ken, like George Melly, like all kinds of people, like Kit Lambert, who's a few years older than me as well. But when I first saw the script, I realised that what he'd actually been able to do was to really locate the actual telling of the story in a proper chronological context. In other words, to take away the vagueness of the original context that we'd had, and let's say this is the end. The war is still going on. There's a blitz going on. Bombs are dropping. This couple meet. They get married. Tommy is born at the end of the war, and therefore, then what we actually have is a story that relates very much to the emergence of the guitar rock hero around the early 60s as a folk singing observer, reflecting mirror to the disaffection and difficulty of the young working class men in particular, but families, I suppose, young families were getting used to the fact that they were having to find a new way of getting dignity, respect, and finding a way of establishing themselves in the order of society without being a member of the services. Because everybody in the previous generation had been in the services. Every single one of them. If they hadn't been in the services, they were either black marketeers, or they did some other work, which or that they were conscientious objectors. So, what we were able to do what Ken did, and he enabled me to suddenly grasp the fact that this was a story of that was very much my story, my childhood story, but also a story which what actually happened is that I suddenly realised, now I understand why everybody likes what I do. because I couldn't really quite work it out. I couldn't really quite work it out why Tommy had been so accepted. I suddenly realised that it had been accepted because it was like holding up a mirror to an entire generation of people who said, yes, this is me, this is what I feel, and this is what I went through, this is my experience, not precisely, but very much, or an experience that many shared, and that Ken's film, the Englishness of it, the Britishness of it, the colourful quality of it, the humour in it, it's bits of it are almost like a Carry-On film. Bits of it are almost like a parody of English life. The holiday camp scene, it's not overdone. I grew up on those holiday camps. They were worse than that. They were crazier than that. My father did, 15 summer seasons at various Butlins holiday camps. That I developed my tactics for escaping from difficult situations by escaping from holiday camps when I was only 4. You're up the chainmail, it's like getting out of prison camp. And so he was the right guy to observe that. The only thing I would say is that because he was a pre-VE Day guy, he was born in the war and grew up in the war, he was with those people whose suffering was very different. The suffering of people in the war was real. Real bombs had dropped on them. My mother and father played at a concert in Bristol when the back of the theatre was bombed, and they both pulled out bits of people from the rubble. It's hard to imagine what that could have been like. So you open up with this scene of 3 sexy chorus girls, with gas masks on, walking across rubble, and you see this teddy bear, it's in the rubble. What is that this is something that Ken has seen. Other people, of course, were evacuated, taken away from their parents and sent to the countryside, and often sent to into the care of people who didn't take care of them properly because they thought we're all dead anyway, and when you came home from those places, you were expected to be grateful. You're alive. There's peace now, just shut up about the war. So nobody talked about it. If you sat with your granddad and you said, what was it like? He'd just say, listen, I don't want to know. As we now read about the war, we know why. It was absolutely shocking. Shocking beyond belief. And but my generation, which was born post-VE Day, all we got was the party. It was like it's all over. The first 4 years of my life were just glorious, travelling around in the group bus, going to Butlins, everybody singing, dancing, jumping in the swimming pool, lovely legs competitions. I mean, literally, Ken got that. But Ken also had a sense of what had gone before, which I didn't have until I got involved with him and worked through the story of the movie. My generation, we remember the end of the war, the bomb, and that was our thing. Victor Gollancz, Bertrand Russell, it's the bomb, 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 it's the bomb. The only thing that matters is the bomb, it's the bomb, it's the bomb, it's the bomb. It's the one thing that's never happened to us is the fucking bomb. Everything else has happened. But that's what they told us, was that we would all have jelly and green slime coming out of our ears, and so there was no point going on. Then the Cuban crisis happened, and guess what? The brilliant Kennedy brothers and McNamara and a few other people sorted it out, and we're still here. So what Ken was able to do was to place the Tommy story, which was kind of a mirror abstract on a whole generation, and really solidly locate it, and it solidly located it in England. So it's a quintessentially English film. I think in the last 20 years, Americans have come to understand a lot more about post-war England. And so the film is easier for them to grasp now and get to grips with. It's still a bit of a parochial piece, I think, more than the album was.